and welcome to our show. My name is Debbie Roy, and many of you know me from working here at Deary Community Television. But many of you don't know is I have a history in fine art also. And behind me and in the set today, you'll see some of my artwork. I created this show, and it's called Success in Art, because I want to share my passion. And I want to talk to other artists, whether it's visual, recording, or anyone else, fine art to music, to share their passion. The goal of the show is to inspire and be inspired, and to talk to people who live a creative life, who live that creative spark. So my guest today is Dr. Harp, and he is a blues player, correct?
Yes, I am. I'm a blues harmonica player and a vocalist.
Okay, how would you describe yourself and what you do and your titles, so to speak?
Well, in the band, I'm the lead singer of the band. I have a band called the Dr. Harp's Blues Review Band, and I am the harmonica player. I'm also an instrument. The harmonica is an instrument, and I pretty much run the band, hire, fire, and get the gigs, and let's do the shows. And you know, I have a makeup of 4 pieces: guitar, bass, and drum usually, and that's the nucleus of the band that I have. Sometimes I have a horn section, sometimes it's just me and the guitar player. We go out and do a folk blues type of thing, kind of an unplugged type of stuff.
Where do you typically play? Well,
we do a lot more of concerts and festivals. I do, for example, I'll be playing this summer in Newbury, Centipede, Harbour, Newbury. I have done stuff here in Londonderry. Trying to get a location here in Derry to do some concerts around here. I'm in talks with a few of the surrounding towns, Pelham and Windham and so forth, to see if they'd be interested in having us do some shows, some blues shows. And I do pretty much very few bars. I don't play a lot of nightclubs anymore because I don't have to be out to 2 o'clock in the morning when I'm doing the festivals and concerts. Yeah. You know, I've done that. I've actually headlined my own festivals up at the mountains, at the ski resorts and so forth. I play up at Centipede Mountain Ski Resort in the winter. I do a lot of shows up there.
So you travel all over, all over New England, all over, you know, what's the furthest you've been?
Well, at one time I was traveling to Europe to play music. That was back in the 80s. I worked with a guy named Big Joe Turner, who wrote the song Shake, Rattle, and Roll, and Flip, Flop, and Fly. And if anybody knows who that is, the Blues Brothers covered a lot of Big Joe's music. Yeah. I went over there for a while. I played in Norway. I was living in Norway, in Oslo, and I traveled into Europe. We went to Europe and Germany and so forth, and I got to go to Russia and play in Russia. And that was when it was still communist still. We went over there. Of course, I was on his coattail because he was considered the national and the headlining act. Yeah. And then when I came back, I started doing my own shows again and put my own gigs together. I played New England. I've gone all the way to the Mississippi. I've played Atlanta, Georgia. I've played down in Tennessee, Memphis. I've played New Orleans. I've done various places in New York City. Of course, at the time I was also living down in New York City. I was in the military, and when I wasn't busy in working for the Coast Guard, I was playing music down there. Yeah. So, yeah, I've traveled a lot. My most recent long-distance date was 6 hours away. It was last summer. It was at Eastport, Maine, and we had a blues festival up there. It was actually called, it was at Rossport Farms in Eastport, Maine. It was called Summertime Blues. That's fun. We had some local bands open up for us up there. And
Did you ever do the Montreal Blues Festival? I went there
I
once.
played in 1985, I think it was 85.
Maybe that's when I went, I don't know.
Right on St. Catherine Street, right on St. Catherine Street.
I went once with a trip. It was really fun.
Yeah, they set bands up every other block. Yeah, I played up, actually that was with Big Joe when I went up there. Yeah.
So it sounds like you've had quite the career and you're living your passion. Now, how did you get started in this particular instrument, art?
I grew up on the Cape. I'm from Cape Cod originally, and as a kid, my neighbor, my buddy's dad always had a harmonica, and he was always carrying it around and playing a few things here and there. So I got very interested in it, and I got one, 2 of them. And I think my first harmonica was a Horner, it was a C harmonica, and I think I got an A. And that's pretty much, I carried around. When I was about 13 or 14 years old, of course, back in the day, you could sneak into the venues where all these blues bands were playing down on the Cape. And one of the bands that that was well known. It was well liked. I used to get to see him on a Monday night jazz festival, jazz night on Monday nights at the local junior high school, which I attended. I lived maybe a couple miles from it. We'd walk there and go see these guys play, and they were the Hennessy brothers. And then I would sneak into the local pubs and restaurants, and of course back then it wasn't as strict as young kids today. And
Oh yeah, no, I know.
you know, you could get away with a little bit more back about 40 years ago. So, and Bobby Hennessy was the guy that was the one I really gravitated to, and he was considered one of the best, probably one of the best New England players at that time, back in the 70s. Probably anywhere in New England, he was the guy that everybody was talking about at the time. And then I used to get to see James Montgomery, and I would go to his shows. And then as I got a little older, I learned about guys like James Cotton and guys like Paul Butterfield and the father of the harmonica, the god of the harmonica, would be Little Walter and Sonny Terry and Sonny Boy Williams and Jimmy Reed. These are the guys that, if you're a harmonica player, you want to listen to. And of course, today, the guy that I really love to listen to is Charlie Musselwhite. By far is the most throaty, what we call in the business, the most throatiest player that you can hear a harmonica. And he's a wonderful person. I've met him many times. Took what they call locker room or dress room lessons from him.
So it sounds like a big leap from sneaking in the back door to watch some of your favorite artists to actually headlining and being in some of these huge venues with some of these big names. So I know it's probably a long story, but you know, what were some of the steps that you took to get from, you know, just kind of listening to your idols to becoming a well-known harmonica player?
Well, you know, as a kid, you do everything that you can. You play the garage bands, you play in your mother's basement, you play in your folks' basement, or you drive them crazy, and then you go and play the dances, and you play the high school dances, you play the high school parties that you're playing at. And then when I got into college, I'd be playing the college parties, and then, you know, after 2 years of college, I went into the military at that time, and it's basically persistence. And getting out there and meeting the people that, like my example would be playing the harmonica, that were very good at what they do, and listening, watch them, try to get to meet them, you know, try to talk to them, get the ideas from them. What are you doing? What kind of a harmonica? Like I use, in my harmonicas, I use a bullet mic, which helps give you a better tone for your harmonica playing when you're playing out in nightclubs. And just being persistent and enjoying it. You got to have the passion to play any instrument, and I really feel even harmonica, because people don't, a lot of folks in the mainstream don't recognize a harmonica as being a really well-known. You always hear about the guitar player, the great drummer,
Yeah.
you know, the guy that can do the drum solo, or the bass player that really, you know, Stanley Clark, for example. You know, those are the people that are well-known, and they're great players without a doubt. There's, you know, every instrument has its purpose, but harmonica is a lead instrument. It's an instrument that you got to put into the music, and you have to bring it out.
But it really gives that unique sound
It does.
to the songs and
It
the music.
does, yeah.
You were telling me a little bit before about some of the history of the harmonica and how it got started in the music. You can give me a little synopsis of that?
Well, you got to understand where the blues came from, and the blues came from the black African American culture. It came basically from gospel music. And then led into the church, from the church into the nightclubs, or the bars, or what they call roadhouses down in the South. And it was very common, like a guy like Johnny Lee Hooker, and even to the day before he passed away, his performances, he was always dressed up with a you know, nice carnation, and, you know, looked like he had just gotten out of church, because that's what they did. They went to the church all day, they did gospel, and then they would go up from the church in their best Sunday's best and walk over to the local roadhouse and sing blues and have fun, and let the Holy Spirit, I guess, get a little bit more rowdier. But that's how it was back in those days from the South, and eventually they migrated to the North, which Chicago became the electric Chicago, electric blues. Down in the South was a lot of what they call folk blues, because they didn't have the equipment that, you know, I may have now that I use.
Yeah, some homemade things,
right,
and yeah, whatever.
a lot
you
of
could
back
find.
back porch music. You know, the bass player was a wash tub. You know, that type of thing. The guy with the rhythm was playing the washboard.
Really folk music, yeah.
Really. You know, pretty much the equipment was not electrified, and as it progressed to the Chicago area, it got more electrified as the years went on. You know, that's why Elvis Presley did so well, because he was basically a white person singing black music. And
it had soul.
And had soul, and he could create that sound as to sell the blues to a white audience. And that's really, you know, that's what I think Elvis crossed lines back then, which was not recognized. You know, and that's what I love about this music, because there's no boundaries in what the music I play and the music I do. You know, it's, you know, art. You know, art is something that everybody should enjoy, and it creates, it crosses that line. It gives people more, you know, like music. I tell people I only do it because I love doing it. If you don't have passion, you don't love what you do, you know,
you won't do it.
You won't do it, right.
Well, you've been doing this for how long now?
Well, I've been playing the harmonica since I was 10, and I'll be, see, how old will I be now? I'm forgetting now, that old. And I'll be 54 in May, so I've been doing this for over 40 years.
Wow, and so that's passion, and that's love. You have to find something that you truly love that brings you back. And you said you used to do this full-time, and now you do it part-time?
Yeah.
Keep that creative spark?
Every once I do maybe a dozen dates a year. And a lot of it is because I rather do outdoor concerts and festivals. I really don't have the drive to do clubs anymore.
Well, it seems like this music, it kind of lends itself to being outside and really getting people revved up and going, and you know, as opposed to, I know a lot of the blues and the jazz are in the smaller, you know, venues, but
they usually are.
I like the outdoor venues myself too. I like to be out there with the crowd and the excitement.
Yeah, unless it's, you know, like somebody like B.B. King, and he'll bring in huge crowds, because he's very good. I had the opportunity to open up for him, and he's great as far as the guys that are the openers.
Yeah.
He's very receptive to bring those smaller bands in, because he knows where they've been. He's been there, so he loves bringing in local bands to open up for him and help them try to get, you know, their creativity and their music out there and their art out there, you know. And you know, if it sounds good and you like it, then it's art.
So who are some of the other people that you've opened for or worked with? And
well, B.B. King was one of them. Thorogood I actually got to play with, because I used to, when I lived in Boston, I used to run a jam. This is back in the 80s, and he happened to stop in, and he sat in with us. A few years back or so, actually, Steven Tyler, because I was playing up in Centipede, and he lives in the harbor area. He comes every year and watches the show. He watches all the bands that show up. But he knows if we're playing, he stops by, and he sits in the crowd like everybody else, eats an ice cream, and you know, I don't point him out because he knows it's my show, and he's very, very nice about it. And one year he asked if he could sing along, so he got up on stage and sang with us.
Oh, cool.
And he loves. See, he's a big blues fanatic, because the Aerosmith put an album out about 10 years ago. They did a blues album, their version of the blues. And let's see, we got George Thorogood, Paul Butterfield. I actually took lessons from back during the 80s. This is when I was in New York City, when I lived there. Guys like Charlie Musselwhite, like I said, Kim Wilson, I've gotten to know him over the years, and he's given me, again, what we call dressing room, because you're in the dressing room talking to him. You say, geez, how do you do that? And he'll show you. And I'm trying to think, I'm drawing a blank here, but I've opened up with Herb Reeve and the Platters, John Mayall and the Blues Breakers. That's down on the Cape. We used to play the Barnstable County Fair a lot, and they have two sets of stages, and the main act, the big act, the Nationals they call them, will play on the big stage, and you'll play on the small stage, and you'll go on, they'll go on, then you'll go on, and then they'll go on.
Like dueling, you know, concert.
Oh no, you're playing you're playing for an hour, and then you stop, and they go on, and then you go back on, and they finish the night out. They usually do two shows, the National Act, and matter of fact, the first show I did for John Mayall, my guitar player didn't make it. He was stuck in traffic, and John heard that we needed a guitar player, so he asked his guitar player to come over and help us out for the first show.
Cool.
So it was great. And John Mayall, if you don't know who he is, Eric Clapton was his first guitar player. So him and Clapton played together a lot. And Eric Clapton had a harmonica player, Jerry Portney,
Yeah.
who they did an album together called From the Cradle. And Jerry Portney is a friend of mine. He lives on the Cape. It's funny, he lives on the Cape, I moved north. When I met Jerry Portney, it was in Boston in the 80s. He had stopped in at one of my open mic jams that I was running. A nice guy. And one thing he told me, he says, you know, it's great you're playing the harmonica, but it's better that you're reaching out and you start to sing, because if you don't front your own band, you might get lost in the mix. You know, he says the thing he regret when he was doing shows that he didn't come out and sing a lot more himself.
So that inspire you? Is that what inspired you to start your own band?
Oh yeah, yeah. That because I knew if I was just a harmonica player in any other band, and I'd be just working for what they wanted me to do, not what I wanted to do.
Yeah. And
You know
how
what I
long
mean?
have you had your own band?
This band, I've been using the Dr. Harp Blues Review band name for since '83, since I got out of the military.
And you told me the story. How did you actually get that name?
The name it was created by a friend of mine on the Cape whose name was Les Cupis, and Les used to play with the Hennessy Brothers too. He was one of the guitar players, and him and I became friends, and he would actually start doing shows with me, and local musicians down there were joining me in, and because of this, over here I have a fishing tackle box. I don't know if they can get it on camera or not, but it's a fishing tackle box. It's very well known among harmonica players to use it, especially me.
Seems like they fit perfectly in there.
They do.
Like it was
yeah,
me.
yeah.
You know?
Well, I always get the comment. Let's see if we can get it in the camera a little bit.
Yeah, just bring it right up front here.
Bring
it
it
all the way
out
to the front.
Okay, wait, well, let me bring that. And if you could see that, there's probably almost 200 harmonicas in there. And I used to bring that in, and Les would see me bring these harmonicas. And of course, at the time, I had a smaller fishing tackle box. And he said, "What do you got there?" And I open it up. He goes, "Hey, it's like a bunch of instruments that a doctor would bring along in a medical bag." And he says, "We're going to call you Dr. Harp from now on." So it just kind of stuck, and that's just the name that's been with me since probably '83, I think. So.
It's also not uncommon for artists to use tackle boxes for all their little things too.
Well, the comment I'll get a lot of times when I'm walking into places is some people, if I maybe go to a blues jam. Some people saying, "So, what are you going to go fishing?" And then I open it up, and they, "Wow, look at all those harmonicas." I collect a lot of them too.
Well, the nice thing too is it's more nondescript, so you don't have to worry about someone just like picking up and taking your inventory.
Right, right.
Nobody. That's just a small part of your inventory, right?
That's just some of them. Yeah, yeah. I get more at home.
Well, since you have so many there, you want to give me a little preview of what you do?
Sure. Let me just get my.
No problem. And then a little bit later in the show, we're going to actually do a little segment of some of your band, and we'll play that for you too.
Yeah, and these, the name of the band is the Dr. Harp Blues Review Band, and I call it the Review Band because somebody had talked to me, said you should call your band the Dr. Harp Blues Review Band, because in this business, if I travel anywhere in the country, I may use musicians in a different area that I know are very good musicians. So I'm kind of reviewing the different musicians every time I do a show. I may not have the same musicians all the time.
Well, it seems like one of the nice things about being in this particular area of music is that everyone was so accessible. And all the stories you told me is like everyone just came up when they were. It's not like in some areas where everyone's untouchable, but it seemed like everyone just took you under the wing and just worked.
That's one thing I've always found that in the blues scene, most blues musicians, even the big nationals that I've met, are wonderful, wonderful people. You could be walking down the local main street or going to see them here at any local venue, and especially the smaller venues, you'll get to meet them after the shows and talk to them and maybe get their CDs and get pictures with them. And of course they're doing that because it's a marketing thing, and it's good to know your fan base. It's good to reach out. You never used to see that 30 years ago, and I've noticed over the years the blues musicians, you can meet these people.
It's great to be accessible, though.
It really is. I think it's a very important thing. One of the things I do at my shows, I always play an hour or so, hour and a half, then I break in the middle, and I go and talk to people.
Yeah.
I want to meet people. I want them to buy my CDs, obviously, so I can pay get gas money so I can get home that night.
But it's fun too, just a cross section of America. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's one thing about blues music, and maybe I'm biased. You can play it for any age. 2 to 92, and people are going to love listening to it. You know, if it's played well.
All right,
You know.
well, here we go.
Well, I'm just going to do a basics riff, and the riffs are a lot of what Sonny Boy Williams would have done, or Jimmy Reed, and I'll just do a real basic.
It's hard to not get your feet pumping like that.
It's kind of nice when you have a bass player with you and you have a backbeat.
And then you really just get going. And like I said, the energy of the crowds keeps going.
Well, blues is very simple. I always tell any of the band people that play with me that when you play blues, keep it simple, keep it basic. Don't complicate it. And like, for example, when I have a drummer come to play with me, the drummers that work with me now know I want them just to bring a 4-piece kit. Simple kit. The guitar player will bring no effects at all. I don't like a lot of heavy sound. That's just the sound that I like. Not that it's not good for other bands or other blues bands. It's just I like it very clean.
And yeah, that works.
Yeah, and the bass player that I have, who I've been working with very recently, his name is Ray Sykes. Ray comes from a gospel style of church that he plays at, so I've got that sound coming in. It's very clean. Outside of the fact, he's probably one of the funkiest bass players I've ever met. He's a wonderful person. And Larry L, who plays with me, Larry's got that clean sound. He has his own band it's a jump band, but he brings another creative sound to my band. And I either use a guy named Ed Rasker on drums, or another guy named Dan Fishbinder, and they bring in a very simple sound that I like. But the simpler the music, the easier it is to create.
Yeah.
You know.
And you just brought me a CD of one of your recent shows, so let's just break for a minute and we'll play you some of that music, and we'll come on right back. I hope you enjoyed that music. And before we go, the reason I heard about you is that you actually started another recent venture with your music, and you've created a new show.
Yeah, I have a show in Londonderry Access, and I'm a big Access guy. I mean, I happen to think, especially as a musician, and because this is kind of the only way we can market ourselves.
We get into the whole grassroots thing.
Right, yeah, and I have a show that I do at Londonderry Access. You can get it, you can watch it. If people here in Derry want to watch it, all I have to do is go to lactv.com.
No, we're playing it at Dairy Access too.
Okay, and you're playing it here, yeah. And you go online, you can watch it in the stream, or you can watch it here. And I do a show there once a month. I bring artists from the New England area to join me. This one I just recently gave you is with a guy named Willie J. Law. He's on that. Great Texas blues player, great sound. And I had my band back him up, and we kind of played a little bit, and then I actually interviewed him a little bit, and then we went and played music. It's a music show.
Yeah.
It's strictly a music blues show. And then next month I'm bringing a guy out of Boston who I've known for over 30 years. He's a great rhythm and blues, R&B. He's probably one of the funkiest blues singers out of the Boston area. His name is Jose Ramos. He's coming. That'll be next month when we record. That won't be till April. And then, and I love doing that. I have more enjoyment doing live, doing a show like that, than I do actually going out playing. And quite frankly, it's
you do it for you.
You do it.
There's
yeah.
no audience that you have to, please, or
Right.
it's just all for you.
Right. And I don't have any club owners telling me what I have to play, how loud, how low. It's.
Yeah.
And I have a great crew of people that have been helping us out over there. That all the way from the staff that works at the Londonderry Access, and even the volunteers, and like you have here when the volunteers come. So I'm sure they're a godsend when they show up to help
yes,
you.
we deliver all this. But no, it's really nice. Like I said, the whole purpose of the show is to find people living their passion, and you're obviously living your passion, and it's been really nice talking to you. Yeah. Now, before we close, how would people get a hold of you if they wanted to learn a little bit more about you or your music, or how to book a show?
Sure, you can go on Facebook. Just look up Dr. Harp's Blues Review Band. Or I also I use a MySpace. It's right there, which is www.myspace.com, Dr. Harp's Blues Review Band. And review is spelled R-E-V-U-E, not I-E-V-I-E-W. That's it. And
I'll have the information at the end of the show, too.
And if not, you got my card, my business, put my phone number. They can certainly call me. I'm not beyond reach. If somebody really wants to have us to come and do a show or private parties, we do a lot of private parties in weddings, believe it or not, because we are out of the norm of the top 40. We're not a top 40 rock and roll band. We are a blues band with high energy, get 'em up dancing, a lot of fun. A lot of fun, band. I have a wireless mic. I come out and I work the crowd. I mean, that's part of my show too. I don't just get up there and play the harmonica and play the music. It's a show band. We're kind of one of those get in your face type of bands. We get you involved when you come see the show.
Okay, great. Thank you for coming and talking with me today. It's been really interesting and learning about you and all you do. And I hope you're successful in all the endeavors that you're working on now. I hope you would enjoy the show. Again, my name is Debbie Roy, and this is Success in Art.